You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports, contests, and events with first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join today and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Believe in the Arizona Cardinals. It is the Arizona Cardinals centric specific show. When we talk about the Arizona Cardinals, we do this 2 times a week, Mondays and Thursdays. So as you listen to this, we are reacting to the Cardinals game, and we'll get into that result in just a moment. And then on Thursdays, we talk about the upcoming opponent. And so I am your co-host, Javon J. Love Adams, and with me, as always, is one and only Ed Easy Smith, who not only played professional baseball but also played in the National Football League. What is good, my brother?
Man, that was a wild one, bro. We're getting ready to get into it, but it has been an overall just crazy weekend of football. Some of these games lost, and I would say a couple of them won, but a couple of these games were just literally just lost by the team that had it in hand. And oh my God, I mean, the thing about it, Jay, it doesn't matter who lost it, who won it. It goes into a column on one side or the other. And some teams, they're going to be very disappointed looking at some film tomorrow.
Man, so let's get
Another
into
team
it.
Really happy.
True indeed. So if you were in my living room just now, myself, my wife, and my youngest son, we were. It's funny because I'm a Raiders fan, but I do root for the Cardinals. So since I live and breathe them more specifically in terms of what goes on day to day here in the Valley, and it was one of those games where my wife, and she came to our show just the other day, and so she very professional and all buttoned up and everything. But when it came to rooting for the Cardinals, she was cursing and yelling and all that good stuff. But so the Cardinals were victorious over the Las Vegas Raiders in the city of Las Vegas, 29-23 in overtime. And there are a couple things, and we'll get into some of the stats, but the topics that I want to touch on is a couple things. One, it was a tale of two halves, because the Las Vegas Raiders, they should have won by 30 plus, but again, it is what it is, and there are a couple things that maybe I want to get your thoughts on that. One of the things that I wrote down, especially after talking to my son, lack of urgency when it came to the Arizona Cardinals. Maybe this victory will wake them up, but we'll see. So that's one thing I want to touch on. Pressure again. So towards the second half, even though I don't think the Raiders got a lot of the Cardinals got a lot of pressure in the second half, there were some things that the Raiders did not do, where I think it was more so what the Raiders did not do as opposed to what the Cardinals did. So pressure, and then the last thing, play calling. So let's get to the first one. Let's get to the last one first, so to speak. I'm sure that you noticed in your palatial estate the number of times that Cliff Kingsbury, that the play clock was winding down, and there was a timeout that was called. There was, and I noted there was what was it? There was with 2 minutes and 40 some odd seconds left, the 4th and 1. I had a question about play calling in terms of the call played. He scrambled to pick up the first down. Should he have, should he have run the ball? Murray was sacked on the thing is play calling. Should the play calling offensive coordinator play calling duties be taken away from Cliff? Maybe let him install it, but have somebody else call these plays, because you can't have be burning up these timeouts, man.
Yeah, I'm curious as to their process, whether he's handling everything, meaning he's got somebody in his ear, but is he making the final decision on everything? Is he, going through the sheet rather than maybe have a tracker up top giving him suggestions? There's all kind of different ways that some coordinators handle it. They'll have somebody eye in the sky 2 plays ahead. Let's do this, let's do that. Or if he's on the sideline literally picking play by play, which Jay, will hinder you in terms of being prepared for the next play. If you're calling and watching,
right,
then then the result is happening. Then you're having to sift through the play list to come up with the next play rather than have someone almost like a tracker or somebody who's either making suggestions or what they call an associate head coach, offensive coordinator, who might be in his ear already queuing up the next, for the next scenarios. As you mentioned, it was one of those things where the Cardinals several times clock running down, and it was almost like, well, we run out of time, just run this, or they had to burn timeouts. And even on that last 2-point conversion, after they scored a touchdown, you had to go for 2, right? I mean, because it was no time left on the clock. So you get the touch reviewing the play. So it's like, where was the mix-up of now we're waiting for confirmation, and then we still got to delay a game penalty on that 2-point conversion. It was, that just happened throughout the game. And as you mentioned, it might be an instance where they definitely need to. I'll throw this one thing out at you, though, Jay, as well. You also have to remember that this is obviously the coach's coach during the preseason, but they're still going through basic preseason with Murray and, the whole process as well. And wouldn't it be advantageous, instead of toying around with your preseason and letting your quarterback call plays in the fourth quarter, wouldn't it be more advantageous for our staff to be doing that themselves and, not making a game of it, maybe going into scenarios and stuff like that we might not be able to prepare for during camp. But in these preseason games, maybe we pick up the pace and do different things to get some practice on that stuff. So, long and short, it's the Cardinals win. There's loss. With that, I know that'll hurt feelings, but man, this was a wild game and a wild weekend.
There was something interesting, again, staying on the play calling for just a moment. It was fourth quarter, about 8 minutes, 35 seconds left. Kyler had that pass to Brown in the end zone. I thought it was a bad decision, but it was a good outcome. It resulted in, initially it was called a touchdown, but it was taken back and the ball was put on the half-yard line. But I guess that goes more towards decision making. But I thought that it would have been better to run the ball. In a couple of different instances, there was a 4th and 1, and they're passing the ball. And I'm thinking, and if you can't pick up a 4th and 1 with your running back, even though Connor left the game, never came back, he had an injury, but you should still be able to pick up a 4th and 1 on the ground.
And also, Jay, I'm very curious, are we ever going to get under center for anything? I think we had 2, maybe 3 snaps under center this game. Situations, and I know it's become like everybody's got to go out of shotgun in these pistol formations, even on 4th and inches and stuff like that. But at some point in time, it just seems to me that we would have that in our arsenal. And we very rarely get under center. And then, like you said, even some of our play decisions, we lucked out on. Obviously the Raiders gave us the ball back and game set match on that fumble. Turned around for a touchdown. But think about this, Jay. On that last drive, our first drive in overtime, was it 4th and 1 or 2, whatever it was, and we ended up throwing a streak down the left side of the field, and we incomplete by right. They should be lining up for a field goal, game over. Instead, obviously, we had their fumbles, and the ball just bounced our way several times during this game, which is good. But in those situations, man, like I said, I'm very curious as to what our game plan is, or are we just making it up on the fly?
Yeah, so interesting. So again, one of the things that I mentioned was pressure. How did you feel that they did pressure-wise? Your man J.J. Watt was in. He played today, but I thought that the pressure was still lacking. They had to do some different types to bring pressure from different points at times. It came some things I'll get to our man Isaiah Simmons that made a really a game-winning play in overtime, really, that led to the Byron Murphy scoop and score. But how did you feel about the pressure in this game?
Well, it was a game of two halves, man. In the first half, we got absolutely no pressure on them. I think, what was it, 20-0 at the half? And
yes, sir.
And honestly, it should have they'll kick themselves in the butt, because that's one of those games you go in, you're up 20-0, and it still felt like, man, we left a whole lot on the table out there. And then I don't know what happened to the Raider game plan in the second half. They allowed us to stay in the game, and then I think it just got to a point, man, where they spent so much time on the sidelines that they got out of sync. And I don't know necessarily if we took them out of sync or they just got cold. It's almost like a basketball player who gets into foul trouble early in the game, like, picks up 3 in the first half and is like, well, we got to sit you for the last 8 of this half, and then we might not even put you in until mid-third or something like that. And by the time they come back out, they're not in the game. They're stale. And it almost felt like the Raiders, for whatever reason, like I said, because they had control of the game in the first half, we got back in the game. And, all kudos to the Cardinals, because one, they didn't give up. They kept fighting, did whatever they had to do. And there was just like we get down there on that last drive and it's like third and goal, fourth and goal. I mean, it just somehow they figured it out. And these are those games, man, I tell you, they can spark a season, maybe give everybody a boost, give you that jolt. We'll see where I don't care what you say. When you win a game like this, is one of those, you win ugly. We won this one ugly, and I'd take a ugly girl to any day of the week rather than going home by myself.
I hear that. Yeah, back in the day, I feel you. I hear that. So what's interesting is, and tell me if you saw this, one of the things that I think is one of the calling cards of Carr, the quarterback for the Raiders, is that he'll let you get back in the game sometimes. And I thought that some of his passes were up. So the accuracy, especially in the second half when the Cardinals were able to get back into the game, so some of those passes were a little bit too high, and I thought the play calling became a little bit more conservative as opposed to continuing to try to keep your foot on the pedal.
You know what it almost felt like too, Jay, because there was so much made about how last week all he was looking for was Davante Adams, and it was almost like, you got to share the ball. You can't just, and then so we get into this game. You look at the end of it, Davante had 2 receptions for 12 yards. And it was almost like they went to the extreme.
I think Hollins had more targets, way more targets than Adams.
And sometimes I guess the way a team is playing you will dictate that, but it didn't look like the Cardinals were necessarily like taking Davante Adams away with like triple coverage and stuff like that. It almost, like I said, it seemed like Carr did this to himself.
Yeah.
I'm not like everybody will tell you, well, you can't just focus on him, but I'll be doggone if when push comes to shove, I'm looking his way. It was almost like the counter to last week's game was, I'm going to try to spread it around a little bit this game. And I think they missed many opportunities to exploit whatever, matchup or coverage, or just sometime, how it is. Sometime, even with Kyler Murray, sometimes you got to throw it up to him. I didn't see any of that in this game in terms of looking for him. And as you mentioned, it takes his foot off the gas, and that's kind of what I felt like. He kind of lost his way. And that second half, well, I mean, you would have thought that I don't know, that they were up by 40 points and we're just trying to run out the clock. They didn't have any type of continuity at all. Yeah,
and so with the lack of urgency, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, did you feel the same thing? Lack of urgency. This is what. Sometimes my youngest son was one of the things. I was writing notes, and so he took my sheet and wrote "Cards trash" at the end of the first half, and so one of the I want he said if the Cardinals win this game, so it's the third quarter, and so he said, hey, if the Cardinals happen to win this game, would you think would that be a good thing? Or if they come close and they maybe fall short, is that a good thing? And so I said, well, it's easier to teach after a win than after a loss and you're in an 0-2 hole. Am I off track there? Do you think that they'll be able to, from the coaching staff to the players, to create more of a sense of urgency when it comes to next week's game against the Rams?
Any win is better than any loss. I don't care. Well, we played great in defeat. I don't care how bad it looked. If you get a W, that is because, like you said, it's better to go home and teach from a win, because you can point out the positives of, look, man, we were down 20-0. We looked like straight doo-doo after the first half. I don't know what switch we hit or what motivated us to come out there, because as much as we can say the Raiders dribbled down their leg and lost that game, the Cardinals had to take advantage of every opportunity to win that game. And like I said, we tried to give it back even ourselves, but in the end, we got this one. Now, this thing about coming out of the gate, because once again, Chiefs did to us, first three possessions, they were 21-7. They scored 3 touchdowns on the first 3 possessions, and we looked lethargic. This game, bro, we went into halftime shut out, 20-0. So that means that the Raiders once again dominated this first half. And like I said, I guess the overriding moral of this story is don't give up, because you never know what might happen. But you can't afford to go falling into those type of holes. You're going to make that a consistent of your attack. And like you said, I don't know whether it was they come out and they're just not fired up, or the game plan isn't quite there, whatever it is. But you can't make that you can't do that on a steady basis otherwise, because like I said, Raiders, by all accounts, what were they thinking and giving this one to us? We very easily could be 0-2, bro, instead of the Raiders. So you take this one, everybody gets on that plane, you look at the film tomorrow, and there'll be a lot of patting on of the backs. There's also going to be a lot of, hey, we need to clean a whole lot of this up. But I'd rather be cleaning up from a W, like you said, than an L.
One of the things that we noted was how quickly the Cardinals gave up on the rushing game last week. But this week, at least they finished with 143 rushing yards. Staying with it, I mean, I think that's key, is you have to stay with it, because, again, you never know how the game, what will turn, where this will go from play to play. But I think it really does show. Again, play calling just comes to mind. I was watching in some of the different play calls in the first half versus the second half, almost as if we're down. So now I guess we can really play the way we want to play, as opposed to seeming to hold something back. And that's a concern to me, because this division, the NFC, this conference, the division is really open, because we know that Trey Lance today, he goes down and he's out for the rest of the season. And I mean, I don't know how much of an impact he was going to have.
I think that actually makes the Niners better.
yeah, because my wife mentioned that. She said, well, that's a bad thing. I said, well, I think the 49ers are probably quietly happy about that. And then we have Seattle, of course. I think they're going to definitely fall back to the pack in terms of being what they should be. And of course, the Rams are going to be the Rams. We'll see kind of how that goes as the season wears on. But it stands, we're going to be chasing the Rams. So you need to be able to stack as many wins as possible.
Yeah, I think one of the lessons I took from this, Jay, and you can maybe, stamp this for me, or, tell me I might be off base, but I think the urgency, when you brought up the terminology, urgency and everything like that, I think once they realized they were behind, right? Obviously we got to pick up the pace. Didn't it seem like once they picked up the pace, it was almost like they got into a rhythm and they just started going quicker and quicker. Yes. And then the other thing with the Raiders their defense being out on the field as much as they were, they just kept, it was almost like chopping away at that wood, man. They just kept chopping away. And with the run, they established and did it just enough to keep the Raiders on point, on check in terms of having to respect that. Decent screen game as well. The one thing I'm still looking for is a little more verticalness in our passing game. But I like the fact that, like I said, they picked up the pace. And that might have made them feel a little more urgent because once they started doing that, they got into a rhythm and they stayed with the running game. And I still believe that we can do even better with the running game. Yeah. And once again, Cliff, if you got your headphones on, you happen to be searching through podcasts and hear this, get Kyler Murray under center more. I keep saying that, man. That would open up so many more options for the running game and for his bootleg and escaping and stuff like that.
Now, were you as nervous as I am? Well, I want to get about a couple play-specific things before we shut down. A couple play-specific things. So we got that 2-point conversion at the end of the regulation that ends up being converted, of course. But as he's running around, I was waiting for a flag. I was just waiting for a flag because he was running around much there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And let me look at something too, because we had our share of penalties in this game. I think at one I heard we had 10 for and double digits, man. And as you mentioned, on plays like that, you're just holding breath. Because I'm thinking there's no way the offensive lineman didn't hold during that 16 seconds of him running around. And maybe they just decided to swallow those whistles. But, yeah, no, we were at let me see. We were at 12 for 120 yards. And that's way too much. But, yeah, I was holding my breath when it came to some of that runaround. But, it all worked out in the end. I'm not sure about you. I almost fell off my chair. Go up, go back, go left, go right. And I'm just like, wow, that was unbelievable. You got to give credit where credit's due. This, I'll say this much: there are only a handful of human beings on this earth that could have made that play. Your Lamar Jacksons and a couple others. There are very few, and I'm talking about some of the most elitist of elite quarterbacks. I don't see Mahomes as great as he is doing that. Maybe Josh Allen might even be too big to pull that off, but there are only so many people that could do what he did, and that was amazing. That was unbelievable.
So let's get into the play that you and our man Isaiah Simmons makes. That ends up being the scoop and score. So he was very instrumental in that play. So good to be able to nose to the ball. He still had one of those up and down games. I mean, we're still looking for him to kind of settle into what he's doing, being that star backer. And then now I know because that play was under review, and you remember a few years ago, the Desean Jackson where he was running into the end zone and he dropped the ball just before he made it into the end zone.
Yeah.
And so that's what they were looking at. And I said, man, you bet not have to bring me back on the field because you tried to Hollywood it, no pun intended.
Yeah.
You tried to Hollywood it and drop it right before you got into the end zone. Your thoughts on both of those plays, man?
Well, I mean, for Simmons, it's one of those, man, everybody's going to love on him, which, should for that one play. If you look at the overall game, bro, he had 2 total tackles, I think it is. 2 total tackles. And we're talking, this is supposed to be our star back, our Jack out there. Still not seeing it. I think they even remarked about it at some point during the game, how he still doesn't look like he's quite yet getting it. But for one play, bro, he brought it, and that's what, I mean, that's a game winner. That's a game changer right there. As far as the goal line situation there, that's one of those. If you are with, if you're on a team like, let's pick any team. Let's say a Belichick team, right? Could you imagine getting that close to doing something that stupid? And I mean, you might actually get fined for that. Belichick might actually take your game check just because you were close to making that type of mistake. Whereas you would. That's like kids who had strict parents. It was like, nah, I ain't even gonna mess with that. I'm not. No. Whereas kids that don't have that kind of discipline at home, they do stuff like that. Those are the type of things that Cliff needs to clean up. And it's all fun and games because we won the game. Imagine if something like that happens. Well, Desean Jackson, a few years ago with the drop at the line.
Eagles,
that type of thing. Those are the type of things, if you're buttoned up, You're not even dude is not just running across the line. He's handing it to the referee and stuff like that. So those are the type of things, man.
Right.
That shows, and look, I might be nitpicking, but that shows the type of ship that might be being run here. Meaning, there's no fear and retribution. And like I said, that stuff like that can come back to haunt you. I hope we never have to deal with that though, because that's embarrassing.
Indeed. So. A win is a win. It was something that it looked very much in doubt after the end of the first half. Again, some of the things that Kyler seemed to be, it was just very much in doubt. So better, coming out of the locker room, there was some positivity in terms of maybe being able to find that base, maybe treating it like, it was the end of this was the end of the preseason, and now we were really starting to play a game here in the second half. It was like the preseason was over. But any other high-end thoughts that come to you in terms of from this game? Because again, getting in the locker room after a victory, the biggest thing that came for me was pass rush. Getting it from the defensive line, so getting that rush, getting that pressure, and then also I think that the play calling is really because it reared its ugly head last week, but not as much because the game was out of hand.
Yeah,
but this those tighter situations where the game is really on the line and you really need that play. You need to have those timeouts in your back pocket. You didn't have them. And you had to make those plays. And as you mentioned, you had to get a delay game because because that's just what it was. So those are the thoughts that I leave as we get to the Rams, because the Rams are going to be more buttoned up than we are. So you have to you have to get those things under control. But what are some of your thoughts before we head out of here?
Yeah, no, the Rams got the scare at the end of their game as well, which might be an eye opener for them. I'm right there with you in terms of, one, we have to get off to better starts to these games. We can't go down 20-0, allow opening. Now, this is 2 games in a row. Let's keep track of this. 2 games in a row. The team, our opponent, has marched down the field, put 7 on the board. And that's, you talk about, that doesn't happen all the time, there are teams that have those streaks of have not allowed an opening drive touchdown in 16 home games. Right now we're 2 for 2 in terms of letting giving up the goods right off the bat. That's something we already have to keep an eye on. And as you mentioned, play calling, play clock. And my lasting thing, Jay, and we'll talk about this obviously because we'll be match up next coming up is the Rams. This is one of those games. Come Monday, it's time to set, because now this is one of those beautiful plane rides home, bro. The only thing bad about this plane ride from Vegas is it's not a little longer, because this is one of those ones where everybody you'd like this to be an East Coast swing where everybody's getting on a plane and we got 3 or 4 hours to get home. That's like a party plane, right? This one's a short ride over from Vegas, but only about 45 minutes in the air. The thing is, once we touch ground, we get into meetings tomorrow, we go over this one. It's time to slap hands, congratulate, man, let's celebrate. Come Tuesday, day off. Wednesday, we got the Rams coming in here. It's time to forget about this one and start focusing on what's coming next. Because, a lot of times, guys get caught up in, man, we balled out last week. Okay, last week is over. But let's celebrate this one today. Well-fought win by the Cardinals. Took advantage of every mistake that the Raiders made, but you got that W, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and so, again, if there's any player that's probably saying that even as everybody is elated and cheering, it's Marco Wilson, because he got targeted quite a bit. He was picked on a little bit, and if the Raiders had kept their foot on the gas, they'd have picked on him even more, and they didn't, and that's the Raiders' fault. And so if I'm Marco Wilson, everybody's happy. Ain't you happy, dog? Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, I'm straight. I'm trying to focus and figure out what I'm doing. I'm talking to the staff saying, "Give me film today," because I know they're gonna pick on me until I prove myself worthy. So again, on behalf of the one and only Ed Easy Smith, I am Javon J. Love Adams. We are presented by Bet Online. We bring you this 2 days a week. So tell a friend about what we have going on here. We appreciate it. You can find us on, of course, Believe.com. You can find us wherever you find your podcast. Just search Believe in the Arizona Cardinals. And then, of course, you can find us on EasySportsTalk.com. We have a tab up there that says Believe in the Arizona Cardinals. And, of course, we're on the Sirius XM app. And as we always like to say around this time, you can
till later this week. Be easy out there. And just, man, I'm almost ready to come over there and give you a hug, man, after what your Raiders just did to you. But, I'll give you some that. I'll give you an air hug. So if anybody's watching this, I'm giving Jay air. I even turn my head for you, man. See, I'm laying it on your shoulder.
Man, it's kind of the best of both worlds because I'm glad the Cardinals won, and I wish my Raiders would have came out victorious. But at least the only thing that could have been better is, I guess, if it ended in a tie, then we would be really killing and screwing.
Yeah.
So we'll take it as we can. So we'll see y'all on Thursday. Have a great one, y'all.